The fairy tale crumbled long before the toe-sucking scandal splashed across tabloid cover, before the disastrous Pizza Express interview, before the Epstein connection, before the loss of titles and royal patronage. The rot, it seems, had set in much earlier, a slow, insidious decay gnawing at the foundations of what was once heralded as a modern royal romance. We all remember the wedding. Sarah Ferguson, the boisterous redhead with the infectious laugh, marrying Prince Andrew, the dashing Falklands War hero. It was 1986. Britain was still basking in the afterglow of a military victory, and the monarchy, ever mindful of its public image, desperately needed a shot of youthful exuberance. Andrew and Sarah seemed to be the answer. The wedding at Westminster Abbey was a spectacle of pomp and circumstance, a global broadcast watched by 500 million people. Sarah, in her ivory silk gown, beamed as she emerged into the sunshine with her new husband, the Duke of York. The crowds roared, chanting, "Kiss the bride!" And for a fleeting moment, it seemed as though the royal family had rediscovered its common touch. Sarah, unlike the aloof and often tragic figure of Princess Diana, felt accessible, relatable. She wasn't afraid to laugh, to show emotion, to be herself. And for a while, that was exactly what the monarchy needed. But behind the smiles and the photo ops, a different story was unfolding. A story of isolation, of neglect, and ultimately of a fundamental incompatibility that would doom the marriage from the start. The clues were there if you knew where to look. Andrew, a career naval officer, was frequently away at sea, leaving Sarah to navigate the treacherous waters of royal life alone. The public saw a devoted serviceman, but Sarah experienced a husband who was more absent than present. The fairy tale quickly morphed into a lonely existence, filled with public engagements and relentless media scrutiny. And then there's the assessment of Sarah's mother, Susan Barantes. Her words, spoken years after the separation, carry a weight that surpasses any tabloid headline. She didn't blame the press intrusion, the scandals, or even the affairs. She went straight to the heart of the matter, delivering a devastatingly simple verdict. Prince Andrew, she said, had no character. It's a statement that resonates far beyond the specifics of this particular marriage. It speaks to the core of what makes any relationship work: dependability, emotional strength, the ability to weather the storms of life together. It's not about grand gestures or romantic pronouncements. It's about showing up consistently when things get tough. And according to Susan Barantes, that was precisely what Andrew lacked. Barantes' words are all the more significant because of her own complex history. She wasn't just an observer. She was a mother watching her daughter struggle. She saw firsthand the emotional toll that Andrew's absences and perceived lack of support were taking on Sarah. And she spoke from a place of deep understanding. Having experienced the complexities of marriage and motherhood herself, the fact that she chose such blunt language, devoid of any attempt to soften the blow, suggests a level of frustration and perhaps even a sense of protectiveness towards her daughter. This wasn't a casual criticism, it was a considered judgment, delivered with the force of a mother's love and concern. Barantes knew Andrew was charming, handsome, and generous, but she also saw a void, a hollowness that ultimately undermined his ability to be a true partner. It's a harsh assessment, but one that gains credence when viewed in the context of the events that followed. The affairs, the scandals, the ultimate collapse of the marriage, all of these can be seen as symptoms of a deeper problem, a fundamental lack of character that Sarah's mother identified so accurately. The wedding may have been a fairy tale, but the reality was something far more complicated and far more tragic. By the early 90 seconds, the cracks were impossible to ignore. Sarah, adrift in a sea of royal protocol and public expectation, sought solace elsewhere. Andrew, often absent and seemingly disengaged, offered little in the way of emotional support. The inevitable happened. Both engaged in extramarital affairs, behavior so flagrant that even the famously tolerant royal family was forced to intervene. Imagine the scene: a tense meeting behind palace walls. Senior royals attempting to salvage a rapidly disintegrating marriage. Andrew, reportedly, was given a stern talking to, a royal version of an intervention. But the damage was done. The marriage, already weakened by neglect and incompatibility, was beyond repair. One anecdote revealed in Andrew Lowy's book encapsulates the sheer chaos of their relationship. Sarah, In a move that seems almost unbelievable in retrospect, allegedly invited one of her lovers to Andrew's 30th birthday party. Think about that for a moment. The audacity, the lack of respect, the utter disregard for the conventions of royal life. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a symptom of a marriage that had completely imploded. In March 1992, the inevitable announcement came. Andrew and Sarah were separated. The carefully constructed facade of royal bliss crumbled, revealing a messy, painful reality. The children, Beatrice and Eugenie, were just 8 and 6 years old, caught in the crossfire of their parents' unhappiness. The separation triggered a swift and brutal shift in public perception. Sarah, once the darling of the tabloids, was now vilified. Polls reflected her plummeting popularity. Leaked, designed to discredit her, painted her as extravagant, irresponsible, and a threat to the monarchy. Susan Barantes, ever the fiercely protective mother, believed that blame was being unfairly redirected onto her daughter. While Sarah's behavior was undeniably concerning, Barante saw a system eager to scapegoat her in order to protect the institution. The custody battle was particularly fraught. Barantes, who had herself left her young family years earlier, was determined that Sarah would not lose her daughters. The hypocrisy was not lost on critics, but Barantes was driven by a deep-seated fear that Sarah would be cast aside, a disposable figure in a royal drama. Years later, Sarah would offer a more sanitized version of events. In a 2007 interview, she claimed that the divorce was a pragmatic decision, a way for her to pursue a career and earn a living. It was, she suggested, a mutual agreement that allowed her to break free from the constraints of royal life. But that explanation, while not entirely false, felt incomplete. Wanting to work doesn't explain the affairs, the scandals, the institutional intervention. It explains the aftermath, not the breakdown itself. It's a convenient narrative, but one that glosses over the deeper, more painful truths. Susan Barantes' blunt assessment provides the missing context. She wasn't talking about careers or protocol, she was talking about character, about the fundamental qualities that sustain a marriage through thick and thin. She was talking about dependability, emotional strength, and the ability to show up consistently even when things are difficult. And in her eyes, Andrew simply didn't measure up. What happened next defies easy explanation. Despite the acrimonious divorce, Andrew and Sarah remained strangely intertwined. By 2008, they were not only on speaking terms, but living under the same roof once more, inhabiting separate wings of the royal lodge. The world looked on, baffled. They presented a united front at family events, a picture of amicable co-parent. In interviews, they spoke warmly of each other, emphasizing compromise, communication, and compassion. They were, they claimed, the happiest divorced couple in the world. Their daughters echoed this sentiment. Princess Beatrice, in a podcast interview, described her mother as a source of joy and resilience, someone who always found a way to inject adventure into their lives. She spoke of a childhood filled with movement, curiosity, and emotional openness. The divorce years, she suggested, were challenging but not defined by bitterness. But notice something subtle. While Beatrice spoke extensively about her mother's influence, Prince Andrew's role often felt passive. He was present but not anchoring, involved but not steady. It was as if he existed on the periphery of their lives, a supportive figure but not the driving force. And that brings us back to Susan Barantes and her devastatingly simple assessment. When she said Andrew lacked character, she wasn't accusing him of malice or cruelty. Those accusations would come later, with far more damaging consequences. She was pointing to an absence, an inability to hold things together when the pressure mounted. It was a deficit, not a deliberate act of wrongdoing. Consider the implication. Character isn't about being charming or generous or even good-looking. It's about having the inner strength to weather the storms of life, to show up when things are difficult, to be a reliable partner in the face of adversity. And according to Sarah's own mother, Andrew simply didn't possess those qualities. Now, fast forward to the present day. The former Duke and Duchess of York are preparing to leave Royal Lodge in 2026, a move that signals the end of an era. Titles have been lost, reputations have been shattered, and the royal family has been irrevocably changed. But beneath the surface, the fundamental dynamics that define their marriage remain eerily familiar. Andrew, stripped of his military honors and royal patronage, is a diminished figure, his reputation in tatter. Sarah, despite her own missteps and scandals, has managed to reinvent herself, carving out a niche as an author, businesswoman, and surprisingly resilient public figure. The question, then, is this: was Susan Barantes right all along? Was their marriage doomed not by scandal or circumstance, but by Andrew's inherent lack of character? Or was it a more complex equation, a combination of factors that ultimately proved fatal? Perhaps Sarah's infidelity and financial irresponsibility, coupled with Andrew's alleged lewd behavior and undeniable lack of character, created a perfect storm of dysfunction. Maybe both parties were to blame, each contributing to the unraveling of what was once a promising union. The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in between. But one thing is clear: Susan Barantes' words, spoken years ago, continue to resonate with a chilling accuracy. They offer a glimpse into the heart of a marriage that ultimately failed, not because of external pressures, but because of a fundamental lack of inner strength.